Have you ever opened your phone for just a second, and somehow, 10 minutes later, you feel worse about your entire life? You were fine before. Maybe not perfect, but fine. Then you see someone from high school on vacation in Italy. Someone else just bought a house. Another person is posting a picture of their new car, their clean kitchen, their perfect Sunday morning coffee, their gym progress, their engagement photos, their business class flight, their finally made it moment. And you don't even want to care. You tell yourself, good for them. And maybe you mean it. But somewhere underneath that thought, there's another feeling. A quiet pressure. A little voice that says, am I behind? And that question is dangerous. Because when you feel behind, money stops being just money. It becomes a way to prove something. It becomes a way to catch up. It becomes a way to silence that uncomfortable feeling, even if only for a few hours. You buy the shoes, you book the dinner, you upgrade the phone, you finance the car. You say yes to the trip. You order the thing you didn't even care about yesterday. Not always because you truly want it, but because for a moment it makes you feel like you're still in the race. And that's what we're really talking about today. Not just spending, not just social media, but the invisible connection between comparison, insecurity, and money. Because a lot of people are not broke because they're careless. A lot of people are financially stressed because they are emotionally exhausted from trying to look like they're doing okay. And that's a very different problem. Most people think overspending is a math issue. They think it's just about making a budget, cutting back, tracking every dollar, and having more discipline. And yes, numbers matter. Of course they do. But if money were only math, most people would have fixed their finances a long time ago. The harder part is that money is emotional. It touches status, identity, family pressure, self-worth, fear, shame, belonging. You don't just buy a car. You buy the feeling of being respected. You don't just buy clothes. You buy the feeling of being seen a certain way. You don't just go to the expensive dinner. You buy the feeling that your life is not boring, small, or falling behind. And this is why comparison is so powerful. Because comparison creates a gap. There is the life you are living, and then there is the life you think you should be living. The bigger that gap feels, the more tempting it becomes to spend money trying to close it. But here's the problem. Most of the lives we compare ourselves to are edited. Not fake, necessarily, but incomplete. You see the vacation, not the credit card balance. You see the new house, not the stress behind the mortgage payment. You see the engagement photos, not the arguments. You see the business success, not the years of uncertainty. You see the new truck, not the 7-year loan. You see the highlight. Then you compare it to your behind the scenes. And your brain treats that comparison like evidence. Evidence that you're behind. Evidence that you should be doing more. Evidence that your normal life is somehow not enough. And when your normal life starts to feel embarrassing, spending becomes a form of emotional self-defense. That's what insecurity spending really is. It's not always flashy. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like buying clothes because you don't want to feel out of place around people who seem more put together. Sometimes it looks like upgrading your apartment because your friends live somewhere nicer. Sometimes it looks like putting a vacation on a credit card because everyone else seems to be traveling, and you don't want another year where you feel like you did nothing. Sometimes it looks like ordering food again because cooking at home feels like another reminder that you're trying to save money. And sometimes it's even quieter than that. You buy little things throughout the week because your life feels heavy, and those purchases give you tiny moments of relief. A coffee, a lunch, a package, a new subscription, a new hobby, a new gadget. None of it feels like a big deal in the moment. But underneath it, there is a pattern. You are not just buying the item. You are buying distance from an uncomfortable feeling. The feeling that you are not where you thought you would be. The feeling that everyone else figured something out that you missed. The feeling that your life looks too ordinary. And that word, ordinary, is important. Because for most of human history, an ordinary life was normal. You worked, you ate, you saw family, you had a few close friends, you had routines. You rested when you could. You improved slowly. But now, ordinary can feel like failure. Because every day, your ordinary life is placed next to thousands of extraordinary moments from other people. Your Tuesday night on the couch is competing against someone else's vacation. Your used car is competing against someone else's new luxury SUV. Your home-cooked meal is competing against someone else's restaurant table. Your slow progress is competing against someone else's announcement. And the brain is not built for that. It's not built to emotionally process the best moments of hundreds of people every single day. So it starts to adjust your expectations. Things that used to feel nice start to feel average. Things that used to feel average start to feel disappointing. And things you never cared about suddenly start to feel necessary. That's how lifestyle inflation can happen before your income even increases. You begin to mentally live at a level your finances have not reached yet. You start feeling like certain things are basic because you see them constantly. A nice car feels basic. A vacation every few months feels basic. A renovated kitchen feels basic. A closet full of good clothes feels basic. Eating out often feels basic. Having the latest phone feels basic. But none of those things are basic. They are expensive. And when expensive things start to feel normal, your money begins disappearing into expectations you didn't consciously choose. This is where comparison becomes so financially dangerous. It doesn't just make you want more. It changes what you think enough looks like. And when enough keeps moving, peace becomes impossible. Because every time you reach one level, there's another level above it. You get the car, but then someone has a nicer one. You get the apartment, but then someone buys a house. You buy the outfit, but then there's another event. You save some money, but then someone your age is already investing more. You make progress, but the internet shows you someone who is younger, richer, fitter, happier, and somehow waking up at 5 a.m. with perfect lighting. And suddenly your progress doesn't feel like progress. It feels like proof that you are late. But late compared to what? That's the question we rarely ask. Compared to whose timeline? Compared to whose income? Compared to whose debt? Compared to whose family support? Compared to whose private struggles? We compare outcomes without knowing inputs. Someone might have a house because their parents helped with the down payment. Someone might travel because they have no savings. Someone might have a luxury car because they are comfortable with debt. Someone might genuinely be doing well because they made smart decisions early. Someone might be posting confidence while privately drowning in anxiety. But your brain doesn't get the full spreadsheet. It only gets the image. And images are powerful. They bypass logic. You don't look at someone's vacation photo and think, I wonder what their retirement contribution rate is. You think, my life looks boring. You don't see someone's new car and think, I wonder what the interest rate is. You think, maybe I need to upgrade. You don't see someone's nice dinner and think, this is one curated moment from their week. You think, why am I sitting at home eating leftovers? That emotional reaction is human. It doesn't make you weak. It means you're wired to notice status, belonging, and social signals. Humans have always compared. The difference is that comparison used to happen in smaller circles. You compared yourself to your neighbors, coworkers, friends, family. Now you compare yourself to everyone. People in different cities, different income brackets, different stages of life, different family situations, different financial realities. And because the internet blends all of those lives into one feed, it creates the illusion that everyone is living better than you at the same time. One person is getting married, another is buying a house, another is starting a business, another is getting in shape, another is traveling, another is having a baby, another is retiring early. But your brain combines them into one imaginary person, a person who is doing everything better than you. And then you compare your one real life to that impossible composite life. Of course you feel behind. Anyone would. And when you feel behind long enough, spending starts to feel like a shortcut. Because real progress is slow. Saving money is slow. Paying off debt is slow. Building skills is slow. Investing is slow. Improving your career is slow. But buying something? That is instant. A purchase gives you an immediate emotional shift. For a moment, you feel upgraded. You feel included. You feel like your life is moving. You feel like you did something. That's why spending can become so addictive emotionally. Not because you're obsessed with stuff, but because buying creates the feeling of progress without requiring the patience of progress. And sometimes, when life feels stuck, that feeling is hard to resist. Imagine someone who works all week, feels underpaid, sees rent going up, groceries getting more expensive, and then opens their phone and sees people living beautifully. Clean homes, nice clothes, trips, restaurants, new cars, engagements, business wins. That person might not be trying to be irresponsible. They might just want one piece of life to feel good. So they spend. Not because the purchase solves the problem, but because it gives them a break from feeling behind. And this is why shame doesn't help. Telling people, just stop spending, ignores the emotional reason they started spending in the first place. A better question is not, why did I buy this? A better question is, what feeling was I trying to fix? Was I bored? Was I lonely? Was I embarrassed? Was I trying to impress someone? Was I trying to feel successful? Was I trying to feel in control? Was I trying to prove I'm not behind? That question changes everything. Because once you understand the emotional job your spending is doing, you can make better decisions without hating yourself. You start seeing the difference between wanting something and needing what it represents. Maybe you don't really need the expensive dinner. Maybe you need connection. Maybe you don't really need the new clothes. Maybe you need confidence. Maybe you don't really need the luxury car. Maybe you need to feel respected. Maybe you don't really need another vacation. Maybe you need rest. And sometimes, yes, buying the thing is okay. Money is not only for survival. You're allowed to enjoy your life. You're allowed to have nice things. You're allowed to celebrate. The goal is not to become a person who never spends. That becomes its own kind of prison. The goal is to stop letting comparison spend your money for you. Because there is a big difference between buying something because it fits your values and buying something because someone else's life made yours feel small. That is the turning point. When you realize the goal is not to look caught up, the goal is to build a life you can actually afford to feel peaceful in. That sounds simple, but it's not easy. Because peace is quiet. Peace doesn't always look impressive. Peace might look like driving the older car for a few more years. Peace might look like saying no to a trip you technically could afford, but would secretly stress about. Peace might look like cooking at home while someone else posts sushi. Peace might look like living with roommates a little longer. Peace might look like wearing the same jacket again. Peace might look like having an emergency fund that nobody can see. And that's the hard part. Some of the best financial decisions are invisible. Nobody claps when you don't buy something. Nobody likes your post because you kept your savings intact. Nobody knows that you avoided a payment that would have trapped you for years. Nobody sees the quiet relief of having money set aside, but you feel it. You feel it when the car breaks and it's annoying, but not devastating. You feel it when rent is due and you're not panicking. You feel it when a paycheck hits and it's not already gone. You feel it when you can make a decision from calm instead of desperation. That kind of progress doesn't always photograph well, but it changes your life from the inside. And that's where comparison loses some of its power. Not when you become richer than everyone, but when you stop needing your life to look impressive to feel valid. One of the most helpful things you can do is create your own definition of enough. Not based on what the internet rewards. Not based on what your friends are doing. Not based on what your family expected from you by this age. But based on what actually makes your life more stable, more honest, and more peaceful. For one person, enough might mean being debt-free. For another person, it might mean having 3 months of expenses saved. For another, it might mean investing consistently, even if the amount is small. For another, it might mean being able to take their family out without stress once in a while. For another, it might mean not checking their bank account with anxiety every morning. Enough does not have to be glamorous. It just has to be real. And when your definition of enough becomes clear, spending decisions get easier. Not easy, but easier. You can look at a purchase and ask, is this actually part of the life I'm building, or am I trying to buy a feeling because I saw someone else's life? That pause alone can save you thousands over time. Not because one purchase ruins you, but because repeated emotional spending quietly builds a life that looks better than it feels. That is the trap. A life can look upgraded while your nervous system is exhausted. A car can look good in the driveway while the payment keeps you stuck at a job you hate. A trip can look amazing online while the balance follows you home. A lifestyle can look successful while your actual financial foundation is fragile. And the opposite is also true. A life can look simple but feel free. A person can drive an older car and sleep better than someone with a new one. A person can skip the expensive weekend and feel proud on Monday. A person can live below their means and not feel deprived, because they know what they're buying instead. They're buying options. They're buying time. They're buying less panic. They're buying the ability to breathe. That doesn't mean you have to disappear from society or delete every app. But it may mean becoming more careful about what you allow to shape your desires, because your attention is expensive. What you look at every day teaches you what to want. If you constantly consume luxury lifestyles, your normal life will start to feel unacceptable. If you constantly watch people your age hitting milestones, your own timeline will start to feel broken. If you constantly surround yourself with people who spend to impress, restraint will feel like failure. So part of managing money is managing inputs. Not in a dramatic way. Just honestly. Maybe you mute accounts that make you feel inadequate. Maybe you follow people who talk about realistic money habits. Maybe you stop browsing things when you're tired, lonely, or stressed. Maybe you wait 24 hours before buying something that was triggered by emotion. Maybe you remind yourself that wanting something after seeing it online is not always a real desire. Sometimes it's just borrowed desire. Someone else's dream temporarily became yours, and once you give it time, it fades. A simple rule that can help is asking, did I want this before I saw someone else have it? That question is uncomfortable, but it's useful, because a lot of comparison spending begins with exposure. You didn't want the vacation until you saw theirs. You didn't hate your car until you saw theirs. You didn't feel bad about your clothes until you saw theirs. You didn't feel behind until you saw their announcement. That doesn't mean your desires are fake. It just means they deserve to be examined before they become expenses. Another helpful shift is to separate inspiration from pressure. Inspiration feels open. It says, that's possible. Maybe I can work towards something like that in my own way. Pressure feels tight. It says, I need this now, or I'm failing. Inspiration can guide you. Pressure usually drains you. So when you see someone doing well, try to notice what happens in your body. Do you feel expanded or ashamed? Curious or anxious? Motivated or smaller? That reaction tells you whether the comparison is helping you or quietly controlling you. And if it is controlling you, you don't have to judge yourself. You just have to come back to your real life. Your real income, your real bills, your real goals, your real timeline. Because the truth is, financial peace is built in reality, not fantasy. It's built by making decisions that fit the life you actually have while slowly moving toward the life you want. And that process is usually quieter than people expect. It's not always a dramatic transformation. Sometimes it's just choosing not to upgrade yet. Sometimes it's putting $100 aside. Sometimes it's paying a little extra toward a balance. Sometimes it's buying the cheaper meal and realizing nothing bad happened. Sometimes it's being honest with a friend and saying, I'm trying to save money right now. That sentence alone can feel scary, because we're afraid people will judge us. But real friends don't need you to perform wealth for them. And if someone only respects you when you spend beyond your comfort, that relationship is already costing you more than money. There is a kind of confidence that comes from not needing to prove you're doing well. It's quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need every purchase to say something. It doesn't need every weekend to look impressive. It doesn't need to keep up with people who may not even be keeping up themselves. That confidence grows when your private life starts matching your public image. When you are not secretly stressed by the lifestyle you're displaying. When your spending reflects your values instead of your insecurities. When you can admire someone else's life without using it as evidence against your own. That is real progress. And it takes time. So if you've spent money trying to feel caught up, you're not alone. Most people have. At some point, almost everyone has bought something because they wanted to feel more successful, more attractive, more normal, more included, or less behind. That doesn't make you bad with money. It makes you human. But once you see the pattern, you can start changing it. Slowly. You can pause before purchases. You can protect your attention. You can define enough for yourself. You can stop treating someone else's highlight as a deadline for your life. And you can remember that the goal is not to win a comparison game that never ends. The goal is to build a life that feels steady when nobody is watching. Because one day, the things that will matter most probably won't be the purchases you made to impress people. It'll be the freedom you gave yourself by not needing to, the quiet savings, the lower stress, the better sleep, the ability to choose, the peace of knowing your life does not have to look expensive to be valuable. So the next time comparison makes you feel behind, take a breath before you spend. Ask yourself what you're really trying to buy. And remember, you are not late just because someone else is posting a different chapter. You are building your life at ground level. And progress made quietly still counts. If you made it all the way to the end, comment the words steady below so I know you're actually building with me. And if this video helped you think about money a little differently, leave a like, subscribe, and stick around. I'll keep posting simple, informational videos around personal finance, discipline, and building a life that feels stable behind the scenes. Because quiet progress still counts.